Welcome into this week's Sneakers and Cleats podcast. As always, I'm Matt Royd. This week just joined by Don, who is more than enough because you've had a wild week.
And congratulations to Chuck, man, for while he's off. His daughter got married this weekend.
Yeah, Chuck's daughter got married on Saturday, so congratulations to them.
Yeah.
Very, very happy time for the Mikatinic family.
Yeah.
So, it's a good reason to be off on the pod this week.
So last thing on his mind is sports this week. You're marrying off your firstborn daughter. Oh, my goodness. I can't imagine how emotional that was for him.
He worked in some heavy metal into the father-daughter dance. He had to have done that.
I don't know if you can get away with it at a wedding. I don't know. We'll see. But it was playing in his head no matter what was playing over the speaker.
There was German beer there somewhere, and there was heavy metal somewhere going on. That's all I know about Chuck Mikatinic.
Most likely.
Well, Don, you have had a whirlwind of a week. You finally get some sleep. We're recording this on a Sunday, so.
Yeah, after the Wemby press conference yesterday, I watched a movie, sat on the sofa, and then went to bed like at 8:30 last night. So I'm doing good.
Good. We're going to talk about your time in New York. You went to Brooklyn. You were there Wednesday, Thursday,
Yep.
Came back Friday. Wemby's arrival Friday at the airport, and then covered the press conference and the rookie welcome yesterday. So, it was. Have you really ever had a week that busy?
Oh yeah.
How long has it been since you've done a week that busy since the Spurs?
Oh, it's been a while. It's been since the Spurs were in the playoffs. But back in the day when they were in the playoffs, there were sometimes 40 days straight where you never had a day off, and you would be in LA for a game 4 or something, and get back to your room at 11:30 or 12 Laker time, Western, Pacific time, which was like 1:30 here, and you'd get 2 hours, and then get to the airport and fly back, and then land and have to come in and work until 11 the next day. And then the next day was game 5, and you're up at 8 o'clock going to shoot around. So there were times where there was, 40 days in a row of that.
Probably since, 2014 though? It's been
a long time, yeah.
It's been a little while?
Yeah.
Because, once they got the lottery pick, once they knew that they were going to have number 1, it's been planning basically since May 16th until Wednesday.
Yep. And then this week was crazy, and Vegas week will be crazy, and then it's Cowboys camp, so we're getting into it, man. The Spurs, I was talking to R.C. Buford about this at the Wemby press conference yesterday. We were talking about Pop, and there's some new adrenaline everywhere. I think, it's not that Wemby makes Pop more interested, because Pop never lost interest. He loves teaching these guys. But there's a new adrenaline flowing through the entire organization. From Pop. Oh, for sure. But, I find it interesting with Pop, though, specifically because people say, oh, when's he going to retire? He's old, and he's this, and he's that, and does he care? Heck yeah, he cares. But the addition of Wembanyama, just like the rest of us, I like covering the Spurs. I like covering the Spurs no matter what. But it's a shot of adrenaline for everybody. That it's not that you care more, but it's on.
It's like juiced up now.
It's juiced.
Yeah.
And I think that's evident everywhere.
All right, but before we get into too much of the week, you guys were in Brooklyn for 3 days with the best photographer in the world, Jack Green.
Jack Green.
You guys have any interesting stories this week? Anything
Jack
crazy happen?
did not wear his Crocs this week. I don't know why.
What?
He didn't wear them yesterday. Maybe he wore them some in New York. There were a little bit of rough spots getting out with the airline. We sat on the tarmac for a little while. Here's what I'll say about Brooklyn and New York. The worst food there is some of the best food I've ever had in my life. Like, you don't have time to eat when you're working on the road. You have to step out and grab something and come back and get right back to editing or whatever. There was a place called My Little Pizza Parlor, which was literally next door to our hotel. And this is a crowded New York street, mind you. There was no place to sit down. It was one of those counter places. You just walk up, order a slice, and stand at the counter and eat it. Best slice of cheese. I had one slice of cheese and one slice of margarita pizza. Best slice of pizza I've ever had in my life. Unbelievable. Then, when Jack and I were down at the Westin Times Square, Times Square, by the way, is gone. Oh, my goodness. What a scene Times Square is. Wild. Mm-hmm. People talk about San Francisco, crime and people robbing CVS's and not even nobody caring. People are smoking weed down the street in Times Square, blowing it in the faces of cops.
It's like Colorado.
I couldn't believe totally naked chicks who have body paint, taking pictures with people.
Is this Vegas or New York?
It was crazy. Times Square was a madhouse. But all the NBA stuff was at the Westin Times Square. I went downstairs to the concierge and said, "Hey man, where's the quickest place to grab a salad or a sandwich for lunch?" He goes, "Right here, man. Right around the corner. There's this little European deli, whatever." I go in there, and it's like a bakery counter, kind of like a Panera, where they have all the bread behind there. And I'm looking up, and they got all these sandwiches, and I go, "You know what? But I'm in New York City." I said, "How about a hot pastrami?" And she goes, "With Swiss?" And I said, "How about provolone?" She goes, "What kind of roll you want?" I said, "Oh, that one right there, like a hoagie roll." Dude, it was the greatest sandwich I ever ate in my entire life. And again, it's just this little hole in the wall, just like the pizza place was. And then I had breakfast at Junior's, which is world famous in Brooklyn. Frank Sinatra, JFK, everybody in the world ever, going way back to 1929, has eaten at Junior's. And one of the best omelets I've ever had in my life. They're famous for their cheesecake. Mm-hmm. New York cheesecake, they're number one. They're number one in the world in cheesecake. I didn't get cheesecake, but anyway, I just have to give the food a big thumbs up in Brooklyn and New York.
Well, I've never been to New York, but now I really want to go. And I'm hungry, so thanks for that.
Yeah.
Well, let's go through the week. So Wednesday was media day. First time you were able to lay eyes on Wemby in person, hear him talk, ask him a question. What was the feeling that you got on that day? What was the feeling of the room? He had his own room, right? There was 2 media rooms, and it was like Wemby and then everybody else.
Yeah, and we've been going to these things for a long time, and usually it's, a round top table with the guy and 4 or 5 media. In fact, this week I got Case and Wallace one-on-one. For a long period of time, I was the only guy at his table. And his brother Keaton played at UTSA. He's a Dallas kid, and he's got drafted by the Mavs. But this was a couple days before, the day before. It's like that, 4 or 5 cameras, maybe 2 or 3, a couple of reporters, a print reporter. Very informal, and you're just able to sit and talk to these guys while they sit at a table. Not for Wemby. Wemby was full Super Bowl press conference. We counted probably 115, 120 media members in there.
In that one room.
Probably 20 cameras. But he was at a table, up there. It was a full press conference type setup. And the first thing that strikes you about him is just how comfortable he is in all of it. Not a bit of nerves. And the other takeaway that I've had for the whole week is this is an incredibly empathetic, compassionate, caring human being who gets it life compared to basketball. Way more than a lot of the other ones that were there. And these kids are all 19 years old. And he's 29 going on 19. And he's well read. He's into art. He's into music. Smart, witty, funny. Those are the things that jumped out right away. And the fact that he really wants to be in San Antonio.
That's what I was going to ask you next. This is the question you asked him at that press conference about what he's feeling going into the day, about the team that at that point might have drafted him. Right. Couldn't officially say it.
Don Harris, WOAI, NBC San Antonio. Welcome to San Antonio, Victor. Not yet, but...
Not here yet, but yeah, thank you.
I've seen your impressions of San Antonio on your tweets, your impressions of San Antonio fans. Can you talk a little about what, growing up a Tony Parker fan, your impressions of San Antonio fans, and are you ready for what's coming on Friday when you arrive?
For me, San Antonio is synonym of winning. And it's when on lottery night, when the Spurs got the #1 pick, I was just thinking I was feeling lucky that they got the pick as a franchise that has that culture and that experience in winning and in creating good players. So I really can't wait.
Did you get the same feeling of what he's saying, of where he seems like he really wants to be here? Like there was nowhere else that out of the 29 other organizations in the NBA, he didn't want to be anywhere else. And that's the feeling that he's trying to exude. And did you get that same feeling in that room?
I don't know if this was I think this was choice number 1. But I do think if he would have gone to a couple of other cities, he would have been fine. But I do think San Antonio was choice number 1. What's interesting is I don't know if it was for some of those surrounding him, because from a marketing standpoint, being in San Antonio might cost him some money. If he was in New York or LA or some other big market city, they weren't really in the mix. Houston and Detroit are both fairly decent-sized markets. Looked like he didn't want to go to Houston. And I don't know about Detroit, but San Antonio, his marketing people are going to have their work cut out for him. But I think it can happen, and I think it will happen.
He's already got his Nike deal.
Yeah, and he's on his way, as we speak, tomorrow to go to Portland to meet with Nike. So he's always got his Nike deal. It's just going to be a little more. It's the same reason LeBron eventually went to L.A. It's millions versus billions when you're in New York or LA compared to San Antonio. Yeah, but I think he's going to be very, very happy from the basketball perspective, and that's what he cares about as a 19-year-old with Pop. And what he found out later with the dinner with the legends is, this is a city and a culture and a franchise. This is the best franchise for him.
Yeah, something with structure. It's almost like it's something like he would rather be here or like with the Heat or something. Someone that has that culture that keeps you accountable, makes you play hard, shows you the right way
and develops
things are done, and develops you correct. Yeah.
I mean, player development is the key. People forget Kawhi Leonard couldn't play dead when he got here, and Tony Parker couldn't shoot a lick. And the Spurs had a plan for Kawhi. They turned him into a great defender first, and Chip England turned him in, just like he did with Tony, turned him into a shooter and an offensive threat. So the Spurs are going to be the best place for him to develop as a player, because quite honestly, with all the hype around him is one thing, and this prospect thing is one thing, but today he's not a great basketball player. He's a great talent, but he needs to be developed.
Right.
And he
as
will
most
be.
people do when
Absolutely.
they come out of college or come out of Europe or whatever. No one comes in a ready-made player.
Brandon Miller is light years ahead of him and was taken number 2. Mm-hmm. Brandon Miller will make an impact tomorrow.
I wouldn't be surprised if Wemby does not win Rookie of the Year, just because like Scoot and Brandon Miller, they're going to get the ball, they're going to go. Yeah. They're going to. I feel like with the Spurs, it's going to be a slow burn.
I don't think he's the Rookie of the Year.
No, and he's the overwhelming favorite just because of the hype that's surrounding him. But you also have Chet Holmgren that's coming back this year. You have all these guys that are going to probably put up way bigger stats than he is because they're going to focus on the development of him.
He will be way more All-NBAs, MVPs, Finals MVPs. Mm-hmm. But Rookie of the Year, the team is not ready to win yet.
Right. So that gets us to draft day. He had his first pitch, which wasn't very good, but at Yankee Stadium. It seems like everybody doesn't know how to throw a first pitch.
Awful.
It wasn't as bad as 50 Cent.
Don't overthrow.
So he did all that, and then you get to Thursday. How many drafts have you covered? How many drafts have you been to, like in the room when it happens?
Not many, 4 or 5.
How was this as compared to that? Like, because number 1 was a foregone conclusion. Like everybody knew the Spurs were going to take him. How was Thursday? What was the feeling in that Barclays Center?
To tell you the truth, Matt, I was in an elevator when the Spurs took him. Number 1, we had an hour special that ended at 7 o'clock.
Right.
And because he was the number 1 pick, they took him at like 7:07 or whatever it was. And so we were trying to get down there. The room is the draft is it's a lot like being at a regular season game. I tell you this, my biggest takeaway from it, there was a lot of Spurs fans made the trip there. But they've turned the green room now into the entire court. Mm-hmm. So all the families are sitting on the floor at the Barclays Center. There's carpet down and all that, sofas and everything, but tables. And then the fans are in the bowl. In the old days, the fans and the teams were in the bowl, and the players were behind a curtain in the green room. Well, now the green room is out in the open, and you can see them all. Right. So it's not a great environment to be at live. It's just as good on TV.
Much different than the NFL draft, where it's a complete spectacle.
300,000 people.
Yeah, like it's a complete spectacle now. You saw what happened this year in Kansas City when they were just flooded the Union Station. So
Yeah. My son went to that, and it's a completely different beast.
Right.
And the overwhelming takeaway from this draft that I'm getting feedback on is how it was unwatchable.
It wasn't very good on air.
On TV.
Yeah. So let's get to a little bit after he got drafted. You didn't know if he would be emotional because he knew he was going to be number one. He has known that for almost a year, probably over a year, and so no matter who it was, he was going to be taken number one. But the emotion that he showed afterwards in that interview and in the press conferences was actually kind of surprising to me. So let's hear a little bit of that.
It's just accomplishing something that I've been dreaming of, my whole life. Hearing that sentence from Adam Silver, I've dreamed of it so much that, I gotta cry, man. I'm a damn Spur. Can't really describe it, still fresh. But one of the best feeling of my life, Probably the best night of my life. I've been dreaming about this for so long. It's a dream come true. It's incredible.
Don Harris, WOAI NBC San Antonio. There's an arena full of people going crazy in San Antonio, and people are driving down the streets, honking horns and going nuts. What's your message to San Antonio Spurs fans as they go crazy?
I need to see the footage of this. My message to them, is I'm gonna give 100%. Make all that's in my power to make this franchise win, to have impact on the franchise and the fan base and the community. I'm really glad, I've felt so much love towards me by the Spurs fans ever since May 16th. I think there's murals of me in the city of San Antonio. This is so incredible, I could not ask for a better welcome than this. I really love the fan base, man.
Has struck me and has been said by everybody from Sean Elliott to the GM to R.C. Buford to Pop is the maturity of the young man.
Yeah.
I mean, you said that earlier. He either has the best team around him that has ever done PR, or he is 45 years old in a 19-year-old's body, or a little bit of both.
It's both.
It's insane.
Yeah, and I think it was because, first of all, I think we have to give credit to him.
Yeah.
Because at 13 he said, I want to learn English. English is the language of basketball, and I am going to be a basketball great, so I need to learn English. So, tip your cap to the young man for wanting to do that. Then his parents are incredibly smart and grounded and experienced in athletics, and they surrounded him with the right coaches, agents, and training and medical. He for a long period of time, this kid has been well prepared by parents who saw the potential. And it's not hard to see it when he was 6'11" in the fourth grade or whatever it was, right? And so much taller than the dads coaching his teams, much less the kids. So they prepared for many, many years for this. But I think part of it's just innate. He's a smart, thoughtful human who also has a great group around him. Boona, his agent, who's based out of Dallas, he's got a French agent and he's got an American agent, and there's nothing they haven't thought of.
Right. So afterwards, right after he was picked, Pop talked, and Pop kind of talked a little bit like Pop does, like, what do you want me to do, a somersault? Like, it's a 19-year-old kid that we're getting. But let's hear a little bit of Pop's presser afterwards about Wemby.
From what I've seen, I don't think he's going to need a lot from me in handling pressure. You know, he's got a great disposition, you know, a good combination of an intellectual ability and an emotional intelligence at the same time. Because of all the hype, he'll have a target on his back. So more than O's and X's to begin with, we'll be most interested in setting a framework and an environment where he's comfortable, where he can be Victor. He's not LeBron or Tim or Kobe or anybody else. He's Victor, and that's who we want him to be.
I think it's going to be really interesting how Pop takes the pressure off of him, because I don't think that Pop, you know, and you would know better than I don't think Pop's going to come in and, you know, make him be in a situation that is uncomfortable for him. He's going to have that pressure off of him because of what Pop does and how he manages the roster.
Yeah, and I was talking with Pop last week, and managing expectations is going to be their biggest concern. Pop told me, he said, you know, how can he be as good as everybody's saying that he is already? He's like, he has a chance to be, but he's not right now. And it's like, you know, the expectations are just ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And they know how to do this. But what's to me that stuck out about that soundbite was maybe lessons learned with Kawhi Leonard. Because Tim was very much like David. Didn't want interviews, didn't care, would rather avoid them if possible. And the Spurs kind of protected him from that. But then in comes Kawhi, whose people wanted all these different things that weren't necessarily the Spurs' way. Their own trainers, their own special opinions when it came to his knee and all this kind of stuff. And look, I was Team Spurs throughout that whole thing and still am. I don't think they made very many mistakes. But the Spurs said at the time that they had made some mistakes in their communication with Kawhi and his team. And so when Pop says he's not Tim, he's not LeBron, we want him to be Victor, I'm wondering how much of that is Kawhi's team at the time saying, we're not Tim, we're not David, we want to do it a different way, we're out of here.
It's almost like lessons learned.
Yeah, exactly like lessons learned. And again, I don't think, you know, I'm the anti-Kawhi. Nobody's ripped Kawhi more than me, and nobody's defended Dr. Schmidt and Dr. Sines more than me. With the, you know, they're the two best orthopedic guys in the two of the best in the world. And Kawhi's uncle was to blame for all of it. But the Spurs admit they could have been a little different in their communicating. And I don't think they're going to make that mistake with Victor. I think if Victor Wembanyama wants to have his own medical team, wants to have his own PR staff, wants to have his own whatever, I think the Spurs are going to make it possible for him.
They're going to have to integrate somehow.
Yeah, maybe before they say, well, no, we do that. We're good, you know.
Right. So after that press conference, all the San Antonio media got to ask him one question.
How ridiculous is that?
Yeah. It was
you have no idea how angry I was, Matt.
It was quite silly. However,
they take these guys around for 2 hours, and they give them to, I don't know.
ESPN probably did 4 or 5 separate interviews.
Panini cards, you know, collector's cards. What are they? Like trading cards, baseball cards. They get interviews with them. Radio gets interviewed with them. France, and then they come to us and say, "Oh, we might be able to get you a one-on-one locals." We might. And then they come and you guys get, he's tired. He's really tired. He's been doing this for an hour and a half, 2 hours. He's really tired. You guys get one question each. So my head was about to explode because none of these people are going to be there at practice after a 9-game road trip where they go 8-0-9 in the middle of February and come back to the practice facility on
rodeo
a
road trip,
Tuesday morning, it'll be us.
Yeah.
It'll be Jack Green. It'll be the guys from the other stations in San Antonio and a couple of the beat writers. We're the guys that cover him. And they were going to give us one question, so I was kind of smart aleck in my question.
So, this question aside, how was it just standing? How tall are you, Don?
5'11".
How was it standing next to him? Because
unlike anything I've ever had to experience. And I've stood.
And you've interviewed Shaq multiple times.
Oh, yeah.
You, for lack of a better term, discovered Shaq in the 80s.
We did.
Yeah.
Channel 4 did.
Yeah, you guys discovered Shaq
Bill
in the
Jones,
80s.
I was his intern. Yeah.
He was, and interviewing Shaq is much different.
Shaq is giant. Yao is giant. I've interviewed Yao one-on-one. Boban is the most giant.
His hands are the biggest, that's for sure.
Goes all the way up to your elbow when you shake his hand. Nobody's bigger than Boban. But there's something about this kid that was, I don't know how to say it, freakier to be standing next to. He's an alien. There's something about, because his length is, because he's thin, Boban's big everywhere and more proportion. Because of his height and his build and his length of his arms, I mean, it was incredible. I mean, he definitely in person sticks out way more than you would think on television. And look at that picture. Look at that picture of him next to David Robinson.
Well, the thing is, so there was that supper picture of him and Manu and Sean and David Robinson and TD. Manu's 6'6", 6'5".
Yeah.
I'm that tall. That's how I would look next to him. Like, I couldn't even believe it. It looked like Manu might as well have been Kevin Hart's size.
So now, Victor told us he's 7'3".
Yeah.
He goes, I'm not 7'4", I'm not 7'5", I'm 7'3". No way.
Without basketball shoes on.
No way. He's 5 inches taller than David Robinson,
In
who was
that
a
picture he was,
legitimate
that's for sure.
7'1". David's a legitimate 7'1". Not like, some of these other guys who budge. David Robinson is a legitimate 7'1", and he's 5 inches taller than David Robinson in that picture.
Insane. It's insane. So Thursday's done. Friday, he hits on the plane, gets delayed a little bit, comes over to San Antonio to a lot of fanfare, which was impressive from the San Antonio fans. 200. I was out there with them, sweating my butt off. I can't imagine how long, and I wasn't out there as long as they were. Probably 200, 300 fans out there welcoming Wemby in the 110, 112 heat index.
Welcoming his brother.
Well, yeah, I'm just about to say that. Right when he pulls up, he gets the hero's welcome. The water cannons fly off. And whether it was the Spurs organization that set that up, or they set it up, or whoever.
Come on, man. Come on, man. You cannot. Well, I guess fans can be guilty of mistaking, but there's a lot different between a 6'5" guy and a 7'5" guy.
That's what I said. So I'm almost 6'6". When I was standing there and I saw the brother walk off, Oscar, I believe his name is.
Yeah.
He was wearing Wemby's jersey.
Yeah.
And he walks off, and as soon as he sets foot on the ground, I'm like, he's not much taller than me, if any. So I was trying to tell everybody that would listen, like, that's not him. That's not him. Keep your eyes focused. That's not Wemby. But anyway,
the fans.
Everybody
were
thought
fooled.
Everybody thought it was. The TV stations were, the beat writers, every single person who was there thought that was
Okay, so
Wemby.
I was asleep because we landed. We got 2 hours of sleep. We landed, and I taped it, and I took a nap. And when I woke up, I watched the replay, and I was like, no, that's not him. That's not him. That's not him. And then when Wemby gets off, you obviously, everybody sees the difference.
Yeah.
Now, again, I had spent some time with him, so I knew exactly how freaky tall he was. Yeah. But I think it's a mistake most people could make.
But it was interesting being there because it really had that kind of like Elvis is in the building kind of vibe to it. It was like, wow, he's here.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, you were here covering the sport and covering the Spurs 26 years ago and 36 years ago when David Robinson and Tim Duncan were selected. Obviously, vastly different time, didn't have social, didn't have a lot of these things. But how was the fanfare for those two as compared to what it looked like?
Man, I don't know. They're all different. Tim seemed to be the biggest. There were 20,000 people down in front of the Alamo the day that Tim landed.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
And I think that's why the Spurs avoided having that kind of thing. This one wasn't really publicized. I think there would have been 20,000 people in front of the Alamo had the Spurs. I think they kind of wanted to avoid that.
So it's Saturday. Was the big day. Arneson River Theater, got the press conference, the Meet the Rookie stuff. I'm going to play a story here from one of our reporters who was there at the Arneson. Her name's Jordan Elder. She kind of has what it was like, especially with CD, who talking Spanish, which was awesome, and dissing the Mavericks in the same interview, which was also awesome, for San Antonio fans at least. So we'll play that right here.
The party is well underway in San Antonio. All for this man right here.
Wemby, baby.
Yeah, Wemby mania. We're all here for it.
Somebody that tall that can do the things he can do, we haven't seen that.
All right, what do you like about Wemby?
He's tall, and I think he'll help the Spurs to a championship.
This is Isaiah Castaneda. He comes from a long line of Spurs lovers, and he's got the proof.
I was in '97 in front of the Alamo welcoming Tim Duncan with my aunt, and now he's here and he gets to see it for himself to welcome the #1 draft pick.
Now I'm here to welcome Wemby.
All the diehard fans were at the Arneson River Theater today.
This is the true fan base right here, guys. Right here.
Ready to meet the rookies.
I can only imagine these young guys coming to a city where they don't really know many people, if any, and everyone automatically loves them.
We saw that firsthand with CD Sissoko, the Spurs' other new player.
I was in Dallas, but like Dallas, I don't like the Mavericks.
He also revealed he speaks fluent Spanish. But Victor Wembanyama was the man of the day, taking questions at the Arneson and at the AT&T Center. He says he's already tried some of the famous San Antonio breakfast tacos.
Bacon and eggs and beans.
And this warm welcome hasn't gone unnoticed.
People have been showing me love so far, a lot of love, and I think I can give all this back to the fans, to the community, to the franchise, and to the city.
From the airport to the Arneson to the AT&T Center, fans are excited to finally welcome Wemby home.
We're puro San Antonio. This is what we do. Go Spurs, go! Go Spurs, go! Go Spurs, go!
Go Spurs, go! Woo!
What was you were at the?
You know her.
I know her. Yeah,
Oh,
she's pretty good at her. I think that's my wife. For people who don't know. So at the Arneson, you were there, and then you went over to the press conference.
I wasn't at the Arneson.
You weren't. Oh, okay. Excuse me. You weren't at the Arneson.
No.
What was kind of that feeling? They don't do Meet the Rookies like this all the time. So what was it Saturday like?
They started. They kind of have started that in recent years. They did it, I think, with Sohan's crew last year. Of course, it wasn't like this.
Yeah, it wasn't like this.
The press conference at the AT&T Center was really well done, and all the Spurs staff was on hand, and there was probably 500 people there of Spurs staff.
Are you surprised at how quickly CD Sissoko, who was the 44th pick, also a Frenchman, and Wemby have been able to kind of endear themselves to the fans already? You had CD, who speaks fluent Spanish, probably speaks better Spanish than he does English at this point. Spoken French, spoken English. Then you have Wemby, who was gifted tacos on the tarmac from Tacos Palenque. They just feel like they're already here. They feel like they're already Spurs.
Yeah, and I mean that's not unlike. It's just the way San Antonio is. That's why people love San Antonio. It's our people. It's our culture. It's our. It's the reason that when Denver wins a championship, people die and. Cars are overturned and smoking on fire in Detroit or Houston or anywhere else. And in San Antonio, everybody gets along famously and nobody's injured and it all goes well and there might be one or two arrests. I mean, it's crazy how San Antonio celebrates together, does everything together. Doesn't matter age or race or ethnicity, north side, south side, east side, west side. It's what makes our city great, and everybody rallies around the Spurs, and so these guys feel right away. I mean, go back and look at George Floyd and all that. When Lonnie Walker and Keldon and these guys are marching with people and cleaning up with people, and Keldon was buying gear for Lanier High School and shooting around over there, and guys just walk into communities. People leave them alone and let them do their thing. It's why Manu, Tim, Dave, all these guys, I think when you asked them as rookies where they would live after their careers, Manu would have said Argentina, Tim would have said somewhere else. But no, today they're all here. Mm. They're all here because they fall in love with San Antonio and they realize that our people love them and are not going to bug them or try to tear them down. And I think Wemby and those other guys, the young guys, feel it right away.
Sean said something. Sean Elliott, the TV analyst for the Spurs and champion in 1999, played for the Spurs for what, 13 years, 12 years?
All-star, sixth greatest Spur of all time.
So he said this. He said that afterwards, after he emceed the Arneson River Theater.
They're Spurs. They're Spurs in every way that you can imagine. I mean, they're terrific young men. They're humble. They're hard workers. They're talented, and they're both kind of wise beyond their years. And so it's just really nice to get another couple good young men in here that are so talented.
What was it like to see the city of San Antonio show up like this for these two kids they've never met before?
That's what we do. That's what San Antonio does. I mean, that's why a lot of us are still here. We understand it, and if you're here long enough, or you grew up here, you understand how people in San Antonio operate. So I didn't have any question in my mind that it was going to be a phenomenal turnout.
Shout out to my wife, Jordan, for getting that interview, too. So,
yeah.
Overall, what were your feelings of this whole week? Like, it's been a whirlwind of a week, and I think we were all looking forward to it since the lottery. And now that it's happened, now that it's here, now that we're looking back at this kind of crazy 4 or 5 day stretch, what were your overall impressions?
San Antonio has an unbelievable chance not only to get back to be a winning program, but they got a great guy. And I don't know that CD will make the roster and don't have any projections on his career as a player. I think he's got a great upside. He's a young kid, has potential to be a good player. But he is definitely a Spur, like Sean said. And Wembanyama has a chance to be transformational. And I think the takeaway for me is, despite everybody saying, okay, yeah, they'll be lucky to keep him after his rookie deal because he's going to want to go to New York or LA. I don't think so. I think he has the same makeup, character-wise, of David and Tim. They all have different personalities. But David, coming out of Navy, could have gone anywhere. He was an unrestricted free agent. And he stayed with the team that drafted him. Tim, after winning a championship in 99, was an unrestricted free agent and almost went to Orlando, but it was Pop and the culture that kept him here. And I think because of who Wemby is, now after kind of somewhat getting to a glimpse of who he is as a human being, I think there's a good chance he's a 15-year Spur, despite his star power. And I think that's only because of who he is. I think he's going to be a loyal person. I think he's going to be receptive. I think he's as grounded as you can be for as popular as he is. Because this kid he's not Michael Jordan. He's Beyonce. He's Taylor Swift. He's otherworldly.
International megastar.
He's an annual, yeah. And you would think that wouldn't do well in San Antonio. That's San Antonio's too small for that. But because of who he is, I think it's not.
And what
I think he'll be comfortable here.
I think what we also learned is that San Antonians can really understand people through their accents after Tony and Manu and now Wemby and CD and Boris and all these players.
A lot of people have asked me on social media, where was Tony? Where was Tony at the dinner? And you got to understand, Tony doesn't live here. Tony lives in France. And that's why Tony wasn't there.
What kind of wine do you think Pop was drinking at that dinner in Bliss?
It was very good.
I looked at the menu. It was scallops and octopus and a lot of other foie gras. They had some foie gras there. I'm sure they ate.
On the menu
at Bliss when they had that dinner.
It was a day. It was a day of menu, or you were looking at the regular menu. Because I think whatever they got at the chef's table was off the menu.
Special.
Yeah.
All right. Well. On Thursday, we're going to have the next podcast. That's the end of this one. We'll get into the future of Wemby here in San Antonio, kind of what Don was just alluding to. We'll talk about the introductory press conferences, summer league that's upcoming. What Don's
the summer league, by the way, I don't expect him to play in Sacramento.
Yeah, he'll probably wait till Vegas. He's got a lot of stuff to do, and he's been doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And what Don's kind of hearing from around the organization, kind of like that little tidbit. Quick reminder, if you can get this podcast wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. The YouTube version will have video elements like the package, and it'll have videos of these press conferences and all that stuff. So if you want to watch there, you can. Please download, subscribe, rate, review, unsubscribe, then resubscribe, re-rate, re-review. It helps us out a lot. Give us a 5-star rating. Give us some feedback. We'll read it out. Once we get some, we'll read it out on the pod. But that's all we got. Don, get some sleep after Sports Sunday tonight.
Peace out.
We'll see you on Thursday.